He searched everywhere with a growing desperation that never slept. Streets they walked together, cafes where she once waited, buildings he had never entered. Before nothing gave him answers, he asked strangers who stared back with empty eyes, replayed conversations until words lost meaning, and chased memories that led nowhere. Days blurred into nights as exhaustion hollowed him out. Clara left no trail. Time moved forward without asking his permission. Weeks collapsed into months, and months quietly turned into years. The sharp ache softened into something distant, something manageable. He focused on work, on deadlines and routines that demanded his attention and left no room for questions. Success followed discipline, and discipline replaced longing. Clara became a quiet name locked in the past, while his life continued, steady and controlled, as if nothing had been lost. The overseas trip was supposed to be simple. Meetings, contracts, hotels that all looked the same. He told himself the change of country meant distance from the past. New streets, new language, no ghosts. Then he saw her. She stood beneath a faded canvas awning, sunlight brushing her face in a way that felt intentional, almost kind. Clara looked different, older, yes, but not worn. Time had refined her. Her features carried a quiet strength now, softness shaped by endurance rather than mystery. Her hair was pulled back, simply revealing a calm confidence in the way she held herself. There was ease in her movements and patience in her hands as she arranged fruit and flowers with care. And she was smiling, not the guarded, distant smile she wore when they first met, but a real one. Gentle, practiced, earned. The smile of someone who had survived disappointment and chosen warmth anyway. She looked present, grounded, beautiful in a way that came from knowing exactly who she was. Alive. Unmistakably real. For a moment, his mind refused to accept it. Greed had trained him to see Clara everywhere in reflections, in strangers, and in dreams. But this wasn't imagination. She moved with weight, with purpose. She handed flowers to a woman and smiled politely, the kind of smile given to customers, not lovers. His chest tightened. He crossed the street without sinking. Each step felt unreal, like walking through memory instead of pavement. The closer he got, the clearer the details became: the faint scar near her wrist, the way she avoided eye contact, and the tension in her shoulders. This wasn't the Clara who vanished. This was Clara surviving. When she finally looked up, her face went still. No shock, no relief. Only recognition and fear. She didn't say his name. Her hands froze over the basket. Her eyes scanned the crowd behind him, already measuring exits, already calculating consequences. That was when he understood this wasn't coincidence. She hadn't disappeared. She had fallen, and whatever life she'd escaped from had stripped her down to this. Flowers, fruit, and silence. He reached for her hands before fear could stop him. They were warm, familiar, and trembling just enough to betray what her calm expression tried to hide. "Can we talk?" he asked, his voice breaking on the last word. She hesitated, then nodded. In the quiet of his hotel room, the city noise faded into something distant and unreal. He set a cup of tea on the small table between them, steam rising like something fragile. Neither of them touched it. He finally asked the question that had lived inside him for years. "Why did you leave me?" Clara inhaled slowly, as if preparing to reopen a wound that never healed. She told him everything. How she had been sent to gather secrets from a rival company. How their meeting at the bar had never been an accident. How, when her mission ended, she disappeared just like she was trained to. Then, her voice faltered. They found her. Threatened him, promised to hurt him if she didn't return. So she did, and the moment she did, they locked her away. 5 years in prison, 5 years of silence, fear, and regret. "I didn't come back," she whispered, eyes wet, "because I thought you had moved on. I didn't want to destroy the life you rebuilt." He reached across the table, holding her hands tighter now. "You didn't destroy it," he said softly. "You were missing from it." For the first time, Clara cried not from fear, but relief. He forgave her without needing words, pulling her into an embrace that felt like years collapsing into a single breath. The moment their bodies met, the tension he had carried loosened, replaced by something warmer and fragile. His kiss was careful at first, almost unsure, as if asking permission from the past. It carried relief more than desire, gratitude more than need, and it lingered like he was afraid the moment would vanish if he moved too fast. Clara answered him slowly, then with quiet urgency. Her hands found his coat, gripping the fabric as if anchoring herself to something real. She kissed him back, not with desperation, but certainty, like someone who had waited a long time to stop being afraid. Their breaths tangled, uneven and close, foreheads touching between kisses, the space between them filled with warmth. A familiar heat returning to places absence had hollowed out. They stayed like that, suspended in closeness, listening to each other breathe. Her fingers traced upward, pausing at the edge of his shirt, hesitating as if respecting the weight of everything they had survived. He rested his forehead against hers, eyes closed, memorizing the feel of her again. Nothing rushed forward. The moment remained delicate, alive, balanced on the edge of something deeper held there by choice, not hunger. The knock came softly at first. Clara stiffened instantly, her body pulling back like she'd been borned. The warmth between them vanished, replaced by something cold and familiar. She didn't look at the door. She looked at him. Fear crossed her face, not for herself, but for what standing too close to her might mean. The knock came again, heavier this time, followed by voices in a language he barely understood. "They found me," she whispered, already moving away. Her hands shook as she scanned the room, calculating distance, exits, and consequences. Outside, footsteps multiplied. A shadow passed beneath the door. This wasn't coincidence or bad. Timing it was pressure closing in. He realized then that Clara's quiet life, the flowers, and the market smiles were never freedom. They were hiding, and now, hiding was no longer enough. His phone vibrated on the table. An unknown number. One Mesagi. Step away from her. The door handle turned. Clara met his eyes one last time. Urgency and regret tangled together. "Whatever happens next," she said softly, "you can't follow me this time." The lock clicked. The moment shattered, and just like before, the past had come back to collect what it was owed. The door rattled again, harder now. The voices outside grew sharper, impatient. Clara stepped back, already preparing to disappear the way she always did. He realized this was the moment that would decide everything, whether she vanished alone, or whether he finally stopped letting fear make the choice for him. His heart pounded as he stood between her and the door, every instinct screaming that this would ruin his life. "Don't," Clara whispered, her voice breaking. "If you stay involved, they won't stop." He looked at her and understood the truth. Walking away would be safer, easier, and cleaner. He could open the door, claim ignorance, let them take her, and return to his quiet, controlled life. The kind he had built to survive her absence. The kind that had never truly been living. Instead, he reached for his phone and made the call that could destroy him. A name from work, a favor that could never be repaid. Outside, the knocking turned violent. Inside, he took Clara's hand and didn't let go. Whatever came next, exposure, loss, retaliation, he chose it. For the first time, he wasn't reacting to her disappearance. He was standing in it, and the door began to open. The door burst inward before he could second-guess himself. Shouts filled the hallway. Clara reacted instantly, pulling him toward the bathroom instead of the window. "They'll expect us to run," she hissed. The fire alarm shrieked as she yanked it down, chaos spilling through the hotel like a living thing. Doors opened. People shouted. In the confusion, fear fractured into motion. This wasn't instinct anymore. It was commitment. They moved through the emergency stairs, not running, never running, too many times. Outside, smoke alarms screamed and security swarmed the lobby. He followed her lead, heart hammering, realizing escape wasn't about speed, it was about certainty. For the first time, he wasn't chasing Clara. He was choosing her direction. They disappeared into the night through a service exit, blending into traffic and rain. Only when they were 3 streets away did Clara slow down. She looked at him, breathless, eyes wide with disbelief. "You shouldn't have come," she said. "I know," he replied. Sirens echoed behind them. There was no returning to work, and no clean explanations were left. Whatever life waited ahead would be built on running, trust, and shared risk. And this time, she wasn't running alone. Then call came from a blocked number as they hid beneath a flickering streetlight. He almost ignored it. Until the voice on the other end spoke his name like a warning. The man didn't introduce himself. He didn't need to. He said only this: "You're being hunted by Victor Halle." A pause. Heavy pharma. Former colonel, current politician, untouchable. The words landed hard. The caller explained Victor wasn't just an official, he was a shadow power, someone who erased problems quietly. Clara's prison sentence hadn't been justice, it had been personal. "If Halle wants something," the voice said, "he never lets it go." The line went dead. The city, noise, rushed back in. And suddenly, running no longer felt appropriate. Felt like survival, and Clara went still the moment she heard it. He had once been her handler, her shield, her closest ally inside the organization. Tall, sharp-featured, always come Victor, never raised his voice because he never needed to. He smiled when others panicked, watched when others spoke. He had admired Clara's intelligence, her discipline, her ability to disappear without leaving fear behind, and he had wanted her. Victor never forgave rejection. When Clara chose to walk away, when she refused to belong to him or the system he worshipped, he didn't react with anger. He reacted with precision. He traced her movements, predicted her return, and made sure the prison doors closed quietly behind her. 5 years was not a sentence, it was a lesson. One he believed she would never forget. Now he was hunting again. Not loud, not rushed. Victor didn't chase, he waited until escape narrowed into corners. He disliked the man beside Clara not out of jealousy, but disruption. The lead represented choice, weakness, unpredictability, and Victor destroyed things that threatened control. Somewhere behind them, he was already moving pieces into place, certain of one truth. Clara had always belonged to the game, and he intended to prove it. The port roared with engines, steel, and salt air as they broke from the alley into open space. Containers towered above them like walls, shadows cutting the ground into sharp angles. Clara pulled him forward without looking back. She already knew Victor was close. Not chasing getting them here. A horn blasted from a departing ship, drowning out the sound of boots behind them. The crowd thinned, leaving nowhere left to disappear. They reached the edge just as floodlights snapped on, washing the dock in white. Victor stepped into view, calm and composed, as if the distance meant nothing. "This ends here," he called, voice steady, certain. Clara tightened her grip on the lead's hand. The ship's ramp began to rise. Sirens wailed. Choice narrowed. 2 seconds. Together, they ran not from Victor, but toward the unknown, jumping as the gap closed, trusting the foe more than the man who had never let anyone go. As their feet hit the ramp, a sharp metallic click echoed across the dock. Not a gunshot, something worse. Victor didn't run. He smiled. The ship shuddered beneath them, engines stalling mid-thunder. Lights along the dock flickered, then died. Silence followed, heavy and deliberate. Clara froze. She knew that sound. Victor hadn't come to stop them physically. He had come prepared to take the ship itself. Victor's voice carried Izeli through the darkness. "You will think escape is movement," Isaid calmly. "It's permission." He had already made the calls, flagged the vessel, cut its clearance, frozen its departure under national security orders. Soldiers emerged from the shadows, not rushing, not shouting. This wasn't an arrest. It was reclamation. Victor met Clara's eyes one last time. The world doesn't let people like us retire. It sighed softly. It only decides who we belong to. Rain exploded against the deck as alarms blared and boots closed in. The port lights blurred under sheets of water, turning the world into streaks of white and shadow. Clara squeezed Ethan's hand once hard. Final. There was no time left for words. Victor's voice cut through the storm behind them, calm and certain, promising capture. The edge of the ship loomed ahead, black water churning below, endless and alive. Thunder cracked as they reached the railing. The ocean below swallowed light, swallowing sound, swallowing choices. Clara didn't hesitate. She met his eyes, rain running down her face like tears she refused to shed. This wasn't escape, it was a disappearance. Together, they climbed, the wind tearing at them, the world narrowing to breath and grip, and the understanding that there would be no turning back. They jumped. The fall stole the air from his lungs. Cold consumed everything: sound, thought, fear. Water closed over them like a door. They felt Clara, his hands. For a second, then nothing but pressure and darkness. Above, the ship roared. Below, the ocean pulled them deeper, spinning them apart, hiding them in its violent embrace as rain erased the surface behind them. Victor watched from the deck as floodlights swept the water. Search boats cut through waves, engines screaming into the storm. Men shouted coordinates. Nets dropped. Minutes stretched into hours. Nothing surfaced. No movement. Only debris carried by the current and rain, washing away the last place they had been seen alive. Victor's jaw tightened in grief. With calculation, by dawn, the storm moved on. The ocean settled, indifferent and vast. The official report would say they were lost at sea. No survivors. No remains. Victor stood alone as the search ended, staring at the water as if daring it to give something back. It didn't. Somewhere beneath the surface, the past vanished completely, and for the first time, even Victor Hawley had to consider a possibility he despised: that some people didn't escape by running. They escaped by becoming unreachable. The scene shifted to a different sky. Pale, quiet, unfamiliar. The smell of salt was softer here, mixed with dry wind and early morning traffic. Clara sat beside him on a narrow bed, hair shorter now, eyes sharper but peaceful. New papers lay on the table, new names, new dates, clean histories. Another country, another beginning. Ethan said her name once, softly, just to be sure she was real. She smiled, tired but steady. "We made it," she said. The ocean hadn't pulled them under. It had carried them sideways, violent and invisible. The undercurrent dragged them far beyond the searchlights, far beyond Victor's certainty. They swam until their bodies screamed, until the rain thinned and the noise of engines faded. When they surfaced, there was only darkness and distance. They didn't stop. They kept swimming, not toward land but away from the past. A fishing boat found them at dawn, half-conscious and unrecognizable. No questions, just blankets, water, and silence. Now, weeks later, they lived quietly, renting a small room, learning new streets, speaking less. Clara worked mornings at a cafe. Ethan took contracts under a borrowed name. They didn't talk about Victor. They didn't need to. Survival had already rewritten everything. This time, they weren't hiding. They were choosing to stay. Night settled gently over the city, rain replaced by quiet. The small room was warm, the kind of warmth that came from shared breath and finally unclenched fear. Clara leaned against Ethan on the narrow bed. The sheets rumpled, their bodies still carrying the memory of cold water and survival. He brushed his thumb along her wrist, feeling her pulse, steady and real. "No one's looking," he murmured. For the first time, she believed it. They lay facing each other, knees touching, the lamp casting soft shadows across familiar features made new by peace. Clara smelled slow, unguarded, and rested her forehead against his. The bed creaked as he pulled her closer, not in urgency, but in certainty. Heat gathered between them, quiet and natural. Her hand slid under the blanket, finding his, fingers threading together like a promise neither needed to say aloud. Outside, the city breathed on without them. Inside, the world narrowed to warmth, skin, and the soft rhythm of two people who had run long enough. Ethan kissed her temple, then her cheek, lingering, careful. Clara laughed quietly, the sound low and content, and drew him down beside her. The light clicked off. What followed belonged only to them and rushed, safe and finally free.
This ends the story of Ethan and Clara. If their escape, their loss, and their love stayed with you. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Stay safe. Bye.